Alright guys, this is going to be the Space Marine video that you guys wanted to see, some of you guys at least, so hopefully it's worth watching and you guys enjoy it. I don't know how many Space Marine players are actually going to watch this, but I know there's a few Dark Angel players and Blood Angel players, so I'll be talking about those guys as well. But Space Marine in general is mostly what this is about and all of the detachments. If you play Blood Angels and Dark Angels, you can still take all of the other detachments in the normal codex. So it's going to work out perfectly fine. Also good to know where our firepower lies, what changed, and all that. I'm only going to talk about the main things, not really going to go full into detail. Plus, I'm sure most of you guys who are interested in this have seen the Art of War and all of the other content creators out there, all of their videos about all the new updates and things like this, and are up to date. This is just my side of the story, pretty much. So pretty much we're going to talk about the few big changes. First one is fire discipline, because Gladius was the best detachment. Now Gladius still does everything in terms of mobility, fall back and shoot, advance and charge, and has a react move. This strat is one of the best strats that this army has. And the other best strat that we have is the fight on death, which is only death and duty ends. So 2 CP auto fight on death, which is why it's so good. Because the Lion, Gilliman, and expensive models, you want to get 2 activations out of all of your units, and melee units usually only get 1, get shot and killed, or get charged and killed. Now we can get our activations guaranteed on our melee units, and we can guarantee 2 activations if we're rushing into a melee army or they decide to charge us. Really big on Primarchs, because those guys usually die from shooting, or something big goes into them. You can at least do a bunch of damage on like Gilliman. And if they just shoot him, then he might come back to life. Shooting the Lion is tricky because he's got a 3-up invul. So, yeah. But going back to fire discipline, this got super nerfed. Like, it's basically dead because I'm not paying 40 points for a sustain 1 ability. This does nothing. I can take any other character in the game or play any other detachment that gives sustain 1. It's very easy. In 10th edition, the most crazy rule you can have is critical hits on 5+ or 4+. And this is one of the only ways Space Marines have access to that in a good detachment, so this doesn't exist anymore. So that's the big change for this. So don't play Gladius unless you want to play basically just good Warhammer, have all the normal rules. The other part to this is that we go to balanced data slate, and as you guys are aware, we got +1 to wound on Space Marines on our Oath of Moment rule. But the key thing here is if your army does not include 1 or more units with the X keyword, which is Templar, Blood Angel, Dark Angels, Death Watch, Space Wolves, all this means is don't take your subchapter units, and you can still have +1 to wound in your own detachment, which is really good. So one of the best ways to play Blood Angels at the moment is basically don't take any Blood Angel units and abuse the fact that you can get +1 attack and +2 strength on the charge, and you have advance and shoot, advance and charge, and you're good to go. Now, to this point, Space Marines are primarily just a heavy scoring army. They play the game well, they score all their points. They're not there to do damage, which is why Gladius is good, because you just play the game, you have ability to like do tricks, get into places, and have mobility. And minor buffs like ignore cover, +1 AP sometimes, and all that. Nothing in Space Marines really gives you insane damage. There are a few things, we'll talk about that very soon. But overall, Space Marines are just I score good, I play the game good, and I win. So this change is very big for Space Marines because all of our weapons have low strengths. Everything in the game is extremely hard to kill, and now we can actually hurt those things with +1 to wound. It also makes our strength 4 chainsword attacks actually go and kill other Space Marines, or 100% kill like elves. Instead of wounding on 3s, we're wounding on 2s. Way better, way more efficient. Ultimately, all this is going to do is make us actually do damage. Before we didn't do any damage, we would whiff a lot of the time and basically lose the game. Now we can score all the points, and when we shoot at our oath target, we'll actually kill it. If we shoot at something else and our oath target, because we need to kill 2 things at once, we can dedicate a little bit of less firepower, like maybe 1 less gladiator tank into the oath target because it's going to die anyways, and then have the other one shoot into the second target. What would happen often at the current moment, before this change came into play, is the first target that we were shooting at with Oath of Moment simply wouldn't die. Even if we position all of our units correctly, that unit would just make its end rolls, have funeral pains. You would whiff with something because you're wounding things on like 4s or 3s and not on 2s, and it would just survive. Just like our eradicators, if we shoot into something with the wounding on 5s, full rerolls to hit, full rerolls to wound, you can still just roll a bunch of 1 and 2s, and your 230 point, like 200, well, it was like 270 points now, basically does 0 damage into a tank that it should just automatically kill. Your Hellblasters, your Intercessors, literally jump pack Intercessors would not kill what they were meant to kill just because they made like 4 1s on the wound roll or something like that. Power Fist did 0 damage to a unit of Space Marines. It's unlikely, but it can happen, and now we are gonna actually kill what we need to kill. So the key part was just, you don't need to take these Spaceful Blood Angel units. You just take shooting, and you take your enhancements, and you take your detachment strats, and you run with that. And if you do take normal Ultramarines, basically, which is what a lot of people are talking about, it's going to be a lot better for you. Again, I don't think this is going to break us, because the problem with Space Marines is not that we have good units or we have rerolls to hit, and now that we have +1 to wound, it just increases our efficiency, which is math. If you're trying to kill something, you're going to do the math. You're going to put enough volume of fire, put enough actual guns, take enough guns in your list to deal with things. We just failed when we rolled the dice. This helps our dice rolls. It doesn't help us play the game better. We already play the game as good as we can with the units we have, and the problem with Space Marines is that everything is just straight overcosted, and some of our data sheets still just are absolute garbage. Hammerfire Bunker costs an insane amount of points. Fire Strike Server Turrets cost way too much. Our aircrafts are overcosted. Anything that is even relatively decent gets straightly nerfed. Eradicators are still an RNG unit. +1 to wound only helps that RNG, like I said. It doesn't actually make the unit like go carry the game and win the game by itself. It's also expensive. Outriders, again, they got a +1 damage, +1 to strength, but they lost their turbo boost ability, so now we have movement. Reliability is gone, which is what they were really nice for, is to actually just auto 6 move into position, score you points, get into combat with advantage charge automatically. Now we can roll a 1 and just completely fail. +1 damage and strength is really good, but that's not as important. I think if you're taking this unit, you're taking in 3-mans to move block, have a little bit of durability. Essentially just think of these guys as trading the mobility of jump pack intercessors that move 12 through walls, and do impact mortals, and we're getting 2 extra wounds on every single model, toughness 6, but we move like 8 inches realistically, and then we go charge. But we will kill whatever we go into as long as it's a trading piece, because damage 2 on every single outrider is just going to be 12 damage to attacks. Should kill whatever it goes into. We'll tank a little bit of damage. We'll end up dying anyways. But jump pack intercessors can throw grenades, can charge mortals, have plasma pistols. So you're still not going to really see outriders. I think the best attachment for them are blood angels, just because you get to make use of the shooting that they have. You get to maybe take a chaplain and do dev wounds on the shooting to make them punch harder. And blood angels have advanced charge basically at all times. They also go to strength +3, so strength 7 on the charge and plus on attacks. If you're going to run outriders, take them in blood angels. If they're not doing amazing for you, just don't take them in any detachment unless it's just a move block. Which at that point you just keep taking scouts or JPI or even ATVs, because they're just the cheapest thing. So that's what I think about outriders. All these changes about all these special characters are basically useless. The only ones I would consider are even useful is, again, if you're trying to play a scoring objective-based game, deny your opponent points, score points for yourself, then I think that Lysander is really good. I think that Ironfather Fedros can be pretty solid, and that honestly the Shrike can also be decent, but overall you're probably not going to take these anyways. There's just no reason to really care about having a lot of OC. And when there is, I'll talk about it when I go to the detachments that I think are still really, really good. Repulse Executioner carrying 7 dudes. Perfectly fine, finally. Okay. Reaver squads. These things just became basically extremely useful, because what would happen is I put a Reaver squad on objective. It's OC5 with 5 models. Their Space Marine players gonna send 5 jump pack guys to come kill me. What's gonna happen is that jump pack squad is gonna kill 4 out of 5 guys, basically most of the time, maybe even like 2 or 3, and then my Reaver squad is gonna just turn their OC to 0. They're not gonna gain their points for securing no man's land or taking me off an objective, and in my turn I'm gonna score my primary because they're OC 0. So Reaver squads are super useful because everybody wants to trade with you with like small tiny trash units. Also, who wants to just come within 3 inches of you and get onto the point with like higher OC isn't gonna happen. So I would try these guys out. I don't think they're gonna be the best thing in the world, but this unit definitely has play. You can probably take 1 in it instead of JPIs, instead of intercessors, so you can at least make that play when you need to against certain armies, certain lists. You can walk up and just turn Terminators into OC0. Don't even have to kill them. You can turn anything in the game into basically OC0 except for monster and vehicles. And if you put them in a transport, which I think they can only go into the bigger transports, I'm pretty sure they can't fit into impulsors because they're not Tacticus, they're Phobos. You can't just disembark, turn their enemy's objective to 0 on the OC after they charge you, kill the transport, you get on the objective. So probably go looking for something that they can fit into. If not, maybe take them in Phobos detachments where you can have reactive moves, get onto objectives, steal them. If you deep strike them with the Phobos Reaver Lieutenant, you can not Reaver Lieutenant, just the Phobos Lieutenant. You can deep strike them, shoot something, and then move flat 6 inches onto the objective and turn their OC to 0 and steal it away from them. even if you don't actually get onto the objective, all you have to do is get within 3 inches by shooting, moving, being within 3, possibly if you can, and then taking it away. Which I don't. You actually can't even do that because you gotta be within 3, and you'll be 3.1 away. So never mind. But you can at least try and get on the objective if they're not completely covering it, and then steal their objective essentially. That's the Reaver squad. They're fine. And the last change is to Gilliman. Okay, so Gilliman, this is the big change, because he now can take 2 of his Codex abilities. This basically doesn't matter at all. The reason for this is because Space Marines don't have problems killing their oath target, realistically. They only have problems when the enemy is taking a stat check list of like a lot of greater demons, like giant knights, which knights you can kill easily anyways, but like let's just say a lot of Catans or something. Then sure, we might need to kill multiple units because they're trying to rush us down in one turn and overwhelm us. And this doesn't matter anymore because going back to the oath change, we don't need double oath. If we can kill the first thing faster and more reliably, the second thing's gonna die the same way. And a lot of times, if you play Space Marines at the moment, you can kill 2 targets easily with enough firepower in your list design. But if you fail on the dice rolls, Oath of Moment just lets you not fail as hard, and it lets all your small shots at least do a little bit of chip damage, which makes sure that things don't live on 1 or 2 or 3 wounds, and you can finish it off. So Rabuta's author of the Codex pick 2 abilities is not as powerful as you think. Honestly, most of the time you just go into the free strat plus extra aura for +1 OC and rerolling leadership tests, which the leadership test stuff never came up anyways. Trying to play around the fact that you now have +1 OC aura is nice, but your opponent will know that, and it can set up some plays, but overall it's not really worth it. And you're not doing double oath every single turn and killing 2 things every single turn. That's not something Space Marines care about doing or need oath the moment to kill 2 different things. We also bring in cursors, which already allow us to hit something on 2s, thus not needing oath the moment because we hit on 2s. We pretty much don't miss. The +1 to wound on 2 different targets with oath is strong, but again, we don't need this. As I just said, it's nice to have. This would have been really good, but Gilliman went up 60 points, and I've been running him all edition, or all of 9th and 10th. This is not... Gilliman doesn't need better rules, he needs points reduced. So that's pretty much it. I'd rather just have him see being lowered. I'm still going to run him because I run him because he's the Primarch. But otherwise, I think, and I've been thinking this for a long time, you just run Space Marines with 0 named characters, take all the damage, and overkill all your opponents with good strats and good data sheets. You don't need to pay 350 points for a +1 to wound on something, when you can just take a hammer strike, get +1 wound on the second thing anyways. That means you're going to do damage to it and get +1 wound army wide. You don't get rerolls, but if you take in cursors, which in cursors plus a hammer strike is 230 points, that's 100 points, well, 130 points cheaper than Rebuta Gilliman. You add a Ballista's Dreadnought, that package alone will basically finish off the second thing that you were going to oath in the first place. And you'll have more units to do actions with, scoring, move block, and just do more damage in general. I think Rebuta Gilliman is still the best in Iron Storm because you can't give you can't reduce CP of tanks by taking captains. You have to take Rebuta Gilliman, and the Iron Storm list or any shooting list really just wants an actual melee output, and Space Marines don't have any melee, so Gilliman is the only thing that can do it reliably. And one of his best rules is to come back to life, and you really, really have to abuse that rule, which is why I think Gladius is still the best for him, because you need to make sure that he fights on death, kills, he charges something, kills it, fights on death, kills it, charges something again, kills it. He gets 3 activations out of him. That will get you back like 600 points out of Gilliman, plus a couple turns of just strats for free, and double oath or whatever you need. And that's how you really get value out of him. Forgot about Stormguard. They can reroll wound rolls. I don't care. The new detachment with Psychers, if you take a Librarian and you get anti-monster 5+, anti-vehicle 5+, they've nerfed this rule before. If they nerf it again because it's too powerful, which it honestly really isn't that crazy, if they nerf it again, I'm not investing time into playing Stormguard with reroll wound rules. We had Stormguard with shoot twice at the beginning of the edition. They had reroll wound rules. They had a lot of rules, and people still didn't take them. So at their peak, people didn't take them. They tested them out at the beginning of 10th edition. Everybody bought the boxes. Everybody had the models. They were not good, and so we're not doing it. I think you can still take 10. You can still pair around with them. I'll talk about the detachments later. They're a decent unit, but I think I'd rather just take intercessors because they got +2 shots on all their weapons. They can sticky objectives, their battle line, and they're 40 points cheaper. Space Marines is a point factory where you want to take the cheapest things to do everything, and basically you need points. The more expensive your army gets, the worse you are. So yeah, Stormguard, play them like once or twice, and then basically throw them aside if you don't like them. If you are using them to abuse anti-something 5+, cool. If you like them for dev wounds against specific targets, especially if you are taking the anti-infantry 4+, with reroll wound rolls, that actually is going to do damage because now you're trying to target infantry, winning on 4s, rerolling all the wound rolls, 75% of your wounds, which is like a lot, will just do dev wounds. So it can pick up infantry really nicely. Outside of that, I don't really care about them too much, because they're expensive and they only work against the oath target. And I already said, when you shoot the oath target, it's dying. It doesn't matter what you use in your Space Marine army. Realistically, you're gonna put something that's gonna kill it, or X amount of units, and it's gonna die. So we don't need another unit that can only do damage against the oath target. We already are doing that in the first place with actual effective units like Lancers, Reapers, Ballistas Dreadnoughts, Redemptors, melee units, whatever we need. There's one other thing. Yeah, so all the combat knives got changed to AP1 on all your Phobos units, basically. All Phobos units and Scouts and Wolf Scouts. This is really good. They can finally hurt something in combat. You'll be taking a few of these, especially in Cursors. I think in Cursors are super good. I've been using them all edition. Getting +1 to hit is a second oath automatically. Kind of, pretty much, because only one thing in your army is going to be rerolling and fishing for actual damage. Everything else is going to be trying to pick up whatever with like a lot of lattice cannons, or rate of fire. So it just needs to hit. It's not going to be comboing off. We only need to combo off in one area because we only have one strat we can use, or we only have one enhancement, or whatever the case is. Okay, cool. That's all the changes for Space Marines over here. That's all the stuff that matters. Oh, this one thing. The Captain Gravis ranged weapon went up to 3 damage, and the Heavy Intercessor is going to 2 damage. This is really nice. Unfortunately, Heavy Intercessors went up in points, so they are like still whatever. If your argument is that 3 wounds is really good, I want you to be prepared for a lot of damage 3 weapons in the game, and they will pick them up. And your Heavy Intercessors will basically have 1 wound because everything does 3 damage. The 2 damage is really nice though. you can combo this off with other things, and with +1 to wound, you're actually gonna be wounding things on 5s. If you're gonna combo with this unit or give it lethals, etc., it's actually useful. If you're taking a 5-man, basically don't. Take something else. It's too expensive, is how I feel about it. And its damage output is not, like, 2 damage is really nice, but you have to combo with it. Otherwise, it's not that great. It also doesn't go into impulsors. And the Gravis Captain's damage 3 is actually nice to have, but it's only 2 shots. But anyways. Infernus Marines are still garbage. Don't run them. Inceptor's changing to 6 inches now. Doesn't matter. 3 inches was the win more. 6 inches is what we are actually going to be using. And usually when we came down far away from our opponent, unless we were taking an objective away against good players. You're not going to be taking away their objective with a 3-inch deep strike. So just come down, shoot. That's what they're meant to do. They came down at points, which is good. And we can use them. The intercessor ability is super good on our troops. So actually run these guys in 5-mans or 10-mans. They're actually going to do damage. And yeah, I would put one of these guys in your list for sticky. Actually do some damage. They have a grenade launcher. And take a unit of infiltrators still. I'll talk about infiltrators in a second. That's it for the balance sheet. Where's the balance at? This one. Okay, delete this thing. Okay, points. Let's go to points real quick. There's not much to talk about in points, but I'm going to go through it anyways for all the other armies. These units going down for Templars is essentially irrelevant. The repulsor is relevant because it's actually a transport and you get 10 points back immediately. The 5 points in the repulsor executioner is irrelevant because it's 5 points. You can't do anything about it. If you're going to be taking repulsor executioners, you're taking like 2 or 3 anyways. You're not taking 1. And the repulsor, you're taking it for transport, so actually getting 10 points back is useful. That's essentially a free enhancement or something, or upgrading a unit to incursors or scouts, etc. Blood Angels, okay. Rage Field Warrior going up is controversial because 1, it shouldn't have gone up 15 points. That's ridiculous. The other thing is, the reason why we took the captain plus assault intercessors was because it's the cheapest thing that does actual damage. The second we're paying 25 points more damage to kill the same unit, it's not worth it. So this enhancement was not an it was not an auto take before. It was just really good, but it was because it was cheap. Now that it's 25 points, you basically cut it and you run the captain with assault intercessors as normal, because at that price point it's perfect. If you're going down like no Blood Angel characters and you run Rage Field Warrior, I think it's actually good because you don't have Sanguinary Guard and melee units. So this one captain can actually be your heavier hitter into your into like tougher targets like a Land Raider or something. Otherwise, it's not needed. This probably just doesn't get taken because your unit is already efficient enough at killing whatever it goes into. This just makes it kill harder, but it's not going into killing X thing, which are super durable. Usually it's going on in skirmishing because your list is made with few skirmishing units. This is one of your medium-ish skirmishing units. The second you pay for this enhancement and it's too expensive, your medium skirmishing unit is still killing that target, but it's now trading down, essentially. And you don't want to trade down. In a lot of games, you have to send this out earlier than you want to, because your scouts and your JPI are all dead. Or they can't deal with the target. So, yeah. But the captain with the basically dead wounds will. So, I think this is something you have to take into list building consideration. but the captain plus assault intercessors is already a staple. Adding this to it kind of messes up with the points cost. And us having +1 attacks, +2 strength, lance, lethals is already good enough that we don't need this. We can just pay a CP and do everything we need to kill whatever we need. Mephiston going up in points is very sad. He should have went down in points, honestly, so this is the opposite of what we wanted. Now, I'm still going to run him because, to me, I can play a 1990 list. I don't need a 2,000 point list. I'll run a 1990 list, and he's in my list for technical reasons. He's not there for anything else. I think you just strictly don't run him, because for 135, if you go right here, secondary guard, 130. I think you just take a 3-man secondary guard, and you guys can do more damage, have more mobility, trade, etc. And Mephiston doesn't do any of that. Mephiston is just a super expensive loan up with fight first and has extreme technical uses that are never going to come up for most of you guys, and you're not going to be brainstorming in list creation. What if, like, you guys are thinking about what is my answer to ABC while I'm thinking about what is my answer to, like, XYZ. So you're never getting to XYZ, so don't worry about this. So I think all of you guys cut him. If he's been working for you, then you keep him no matter what, because what he's doing in your list is important, and 10 points isn't going to make a difference in terms of that. Also, you gained 10 points because your 6-man secondary guard went down 5 each. So 10 points, so technically your list didn't change at all. The only thing that went up in your current list was this Rachfield Warrior. I think you just drop it, keep the same list, put in those 15 points into whatever else. Your scouts also went up, so maybe you take this off, keep the scouts, keep the same list. Nothing changed. That's it for Blood Angels. I'll talk about running Blood Angels as no special characters later. Where are the rest of the Space Marines? Dark Angels, Lion went up. This is bullshit. He got +1 damage on his sweep profile. He basically should have had it anyways. It didn't need to go up 30 points. Space Marine problem is our point cost. Everything is overcosted. So yeah, this is just 30 points that we don't want to pay. So if you're taking the Lion, you take him anyways because it's cool, and otherwise he's not going to be in your list. If you do run him, again, I think Gladius is really good, or some sort of tricky army is going to be pretty good for him because of his Battle Shock aura. If you, none of you guys have played Gilliman in your army list, you guys just play Blood Angels and sometimes the Lion. If you're going to use a Lion, just be insanely aggressive, because Gilliman is a linchpin king unit where he's going to buff his army, play defensively, and play a good game of 40k like Spaceman is supposed to. When you take the Lion, he is meant to go up, cause huge problems for your opponent, and they don't know what's going to happen, because if they fail that leadership test, their AOC, their +1 lance, their sustain hits, whatever it is, it's just going to fall apart. They can't reroll charges, they can't interrupt. And he has fight first. So if you go aggressive with him, your opponent can't even charge you back, because it's going to cause huge issues. So if you play the Lion, be super aggressive, almost like he's Angron. He's not going to come back to life, but your opponent's not going to just finish him off. Obviously don't suicide him, but just be way more aggressive and use him to do a lot of damage, because he hits harder than Gilliman, and he's harder to kill than Gilliman, excluding the revive, which never works. Deathwatch, I'm not going to talk about Deathwatch because This is complicated army. I actually need to still look into it. Just know that I think Deathwatch is good, and their Tome of Accolades is another reason why you can play Space Marines. Don't take Gilliman, take the Tome, have Oath of the Moment on 2 targets without even having to kill the first target. It still has +1 damage on a captain at all times. It has +2 damage on a captain if you want to, so your captain can go kill something. Don't use his devastating wounds, then charge something else, +2 attacks, +2 damage, and dev wounds. Just murder whatever you want. Damage 4, I think. Beacon of Legilis is the up-down. It's good. Everything in Deathwatch is good. But this army is a little more complicated, so if anyone actually plays Deathwatch, I'll talk about this like later. Otherwise, Terminators are really good. The new Talon Strike team is actually really solid, and the Indomitor Kill team, people have been running 3 of these. They're really good, and the new Meltas are actually excellent because you can deep strike them, or wrap, or just reserve, bring them in, give them +1 or 1 CP. Your kill team gains +6-inch range, and now your Meltas are automatically in Melta range at all times. So that's really good. And they're strength 11, so you're winning on 3s, which is into like most things, which is really good. Don't care about Kari, Grey Knights. Anybody who's interested in Grey Knights, just reach out to me. The army has changed 0 from its old days. Losing 3-inch deep strike essentially means Grey Knights are in a very bad position because we can't clear screens anymore and then on turn 2 go in. We also can't run away, so our army will just die to everything if you take the new detachment. If you stick with this detachment, you can't clear screens, you can run away with Mr. Deimos, but everything in the army has... There's so many armies now that have 16 deep strike that will just shoot your Terminators so hard, like the new guard detachment with AP, like AP2, AP3, no cover. You're just going to lose all your Terminators in 2 seconds. And they can do that every turn. Along with indirect, or just having transports, disembarking, etc. It's not going to be a great time, and then good luck trying to kill anything that is high toughness, because Nemesis Dread Knights are not going to kill a Leman Russ. They're all AP1 ignore cover, so Leman Russ is saving on 3s. If they pop smoke, you have rerolls, but guess what? You're just going to miss again, so it's almost like you didn't have rerolls in the first place. And you're going to do 0 damage, essentially. And if they have the -1 damage in shooting, you're going to do even less damage. Imperial Knights, fine. Votan, where's the rest of the Space Marines? Aha, here we go. Infernus Marines went up 10 and 20 points. This is horrible. If they stayed the same, I would consider taking 30 of them with the extra AP and the +1 to wound in Firestorm. But now that they went up all these points, I essentially went up 60 points by taking 30 of them. That's points I can't gain back. So let's just talk about this. You take Infernus Marines, you run 30 of them because they're like cheap. They do flamethrowers. You're playing Firestorm. You want to do as much dev wounds as you can. That's the whole point of it. You take 30 of them. This is an extreme end. But they went up 20 points per squad. That's 60 points. Your scouts, if you're taking, let's say, 3 of them, because, again, we're taking 3 of everything, they went up 10 points each. So now you're paying... Did the scouts go up 10 points or was it 5 points? Scouts went up 5 points, I think. Scouts went up 5 points, yeah. So that's another 15 points. That's 75 points. Let's say Ultramarines is the best. Gilliman went up 60 points. You're already losing a whole Gladiator tank or like 2 scout squads. Okay, so you can't run the same list anymore. It's not good. So Infernus Marines should have not gone up. In fact, they probably should have went down another 5 points. Or they should have changed their battle shock rule to something that was actually useful, not just this. Inceptor's going down, super good. I think everybody go and try a squad of 3. Try and shoot something off. Use it as a trading piece. Use it as getting behind your opponent, shooting them. Then the next turn coming and taking their objective, or rapid ingressing 9 inches away. Because a lot of armies in the game are not worried about 3 deep strike. They're not taking infiltrators as much, which is why I think every Space Marine player should still take a unit of infiltrators unless you are at like super high skill level that you don't need to. But because you guys are not at that skill level, take a unit infiltrators, and it's going to make so many games a lot easier for you and give your opponent a headache when all of a sudden their entire identity, like Grey Knights, was to actually get a 6-inch deep strike and shoot you. Well, now they can't do that, so they can't get the angle, so you're standing on objectives, being untargetable. They can't get into your back line because they can only 6-inch, no more 3-inch, so they can't fit anymore. Their Grey Knight bases are too big, and you end up just winning the game at that point. Heavy Intercessors, already talked about this. Going up 15 points is a scam. They should have stayed the same. I think then we would see them actually being used. Going up 15 points, you might see a 5-man. Maybe you see some lists running a big squad for the wounds, but they're not that great unless you combo them with something, which I'll talk about in a second. Calgar going up 15 points is irrelevant because if you're taking him, it's for the CP. It doesn't matter how many points he really costs until he's like 250. It's fine. This change is not a huge deal, unlike the Gilliman change. Uriel Ventress went up 20 points. If you're taking him, it's for the deep strike. Armor Contempt is not being spammed anymore, and it only lasts 1 phase, so you don't need Uriel Ventress to give armies -1 or make their strats cost 1 more. So Uriel Ventress essentially is still going to be seen a lot because you want deep strike. But if you're taking a lot of tanks, it makes the infantry lists a lot weaker, and so Uriel Ventress will just be cut. If I want to give a unit in my opponent's army, every single strat costs 1 more. I'll just take the assassin for 5 more points. She can up down score me points, and she can get into any position I want and give the aura, while Uriel Ventress is kind of going to be on the map behind a wall and can only affect that side of the map. Also moves kind of slow. If you do take Uriel, I do recommend you just run him without anyone attached to him, because you're only taking him again to go up, get the aura once per game, then he dies, or so you can give a unit in your army deep strike, and then he just sits around screening for 95 points, or goes into reserves and goes get yourself like homers or an action or containment once per game, and then he dies. Reaver Squad going up 5 points, I think it's bad. I wish they had stayed the same, but 80 points, it's fine. Scout Squad gone up, bad. Sternguard Veterans gone up, also bad. I wish they stayed the same, but Sternguard is at least okay. I just don't think you want what they're trying to do. Rebooted Gilliman going up 60 points is complete garbage. Okay. So let me put it this way. The Lion went up 30 points for +1 damage. Gilliman goes up 30 points because he gets a second aura. Gilliman goes up another 30 points for no reason. He didn't gain anything to make up for the other 30 points. So essentially he's gaining +60 points to pick a second aura. I'd rather just have 1 aura and he's 60 points cheaper, and then I can play better and use the rules I want to use and not be forced to use both of my rules. Right? The argument here is, let's pretend if Gilliman wants to use all 3 auras at the same time, does he go up another 30 points? If you want his revive to come back on a 2+, does he go up another 30 points? right? If you just keep giving him rules, is he just gonna keep going up till he's like 500 points? I don't care about him being 500 points. This guy could literally cost like 50 points. You know, see the 60 point cost where I can like use his aura? Let's just like say the aura is like 100 points. I'll pay 100 points for a little dude with like 2 wounds who's like a lone op guy and just lets me pick a second oath target. I don't, it's, if it was an enhancement to pick a second oath target every single turn, I would take the enhancement. I don't want to pay 345 points for an enhancement that says pick a second aura on a character, and then as usual, to take that character, you have to take a squad with it to keep that character alive, right? So I'm paying 345 points for a squad of dudes, which is like super expensive, that have a revive. The squad comes back to life. It's maybe comes back to life. I'm not paying 345 points. I'll just not take it. Cool. So that's how Gilliman works. Space Wolves, all of this is irrelevant. Tiger, no, it's Talon Sons, Tyrannid. I think that's it for Space Marines. Cool. So that's points. We can go past points now. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Lion's Blade Task Force first. Why am I going to start with this one first? Because all of you guys play Dark Angels. Now, everybody who looked at this detachment immediately went towards, oh my god, I get +1 to wound, and I get +2 to charge, right? +2 to charge, everybody wants to charge, do combat, it's fun, good for them, it's fine. But again, think about it. If you're using a Deathwing unit that costs minimum 60 points, it's going in, it has to charge. Okay, so that unit's going to die next turn, so you're losing 60 points. Then you're charging with something else on a 7, which is 50%, which can fail. So you're going to use a CP. So best case scenario, you're charging in 60 points. It's going to die next turn. You're charging your Dreadnought, which is going to trade into whatever it's charging into because it actually has to kill it. And then you're spending a CP. So it's 1 CP, make the charge, and lose 60 points. Essentially that adds up to an overpriced enhancement. You're paying like 100 points or maybe 80 points to actually get +2 to charge. And even if I let you charge me with a Brutalis Dreadnought or a Redemptor, you have 6 attacks, I have 5 dudes. If that target is not oathed, you're going to miss with like 1 or 2 attacks. Now you have 4 attacks. You're going to kill 4 guys. My unit's going to live. And you didn't even kill the unit that you're trying to kill. Right? You just sacrificed 220 points with a Brutalis, that, a CP, to make this work. I think if you're taking a Brutalis or anything from charge, from reserves, it's good. To make a play on like your go turn or from the side, and then your opponent has to like deal with that Redemptor. You probably want to oath the target that you're going into, or the enemy is already coming towards you, and then your like Terminators or something that is hiding behind a wall can get an easier charge that usually is a 7-inch charge. It's going to become a 5-inch charge. I think that's when it's going to be a lot more useful. And it's going to be more useful if you put an ATV on an objective. Your opponent charges at an ATV, out OCs you, doesn't kill the ATV because no trash unit in the game is going to kill an ATV because they all are winning it on 5s with like AP 1. So you hold the objective, and now your other units that are behind the wall usually have to make a 7-inch charge, a 8-inch charge. They're now making a 5-inch or whatever charge a lot easier. And if you do pay the CP to give your ATV -1 to hit, they're not going to be killing your ATV essentially. And then the ATV can fall back, stay on the objective. Your units that want to charge that unit will charge it. This is also another way to get your Deathwing Knights starting on the table. They move slow as hell. Essentially, this gives you +2 to your movement. So your Deathwing Knights move 7, get over the side of the train instead of just ending on top of it or behind it. and then charge something, and that's how that's gonna work. It's not actually that strong. Enhancements, +1 damage on a character, again 15 points, very good on a captain, take it. Lord of the Hunt, you can fall back and shoot on a raring model. This thing is basically useless because you're taking a chaplain on a bike for this, and that bike unit is going to die the second it steps out into the open. Stalwart Champion, 25 points. Battle Shock. So if it's not Battle Shock, you get +1 to the OC. It's cute. You can take it making your battle line OC3 or making Blade Guard Veterans OC2 is actually good. Or making Assault Intercessors making Assault Intercessors OC3 is not that relevant. But if you can play on WTC or a certain tournament you're going into, or player plays terrain, and you're gonna keep you're gonna keep a captain with 6 Blade Guard behind a wall. They don't have fight first, but they have 2 OC each. You take an Ancient, they're 3 OC each. Lots of attacks. They're probably not gonna die in one activation because there are Deathwing. With like Uriel, or not Uriel, let's say you give them, what's the captain's name? The Dark Azrael. So if you take Azrael plus a lieutenant with Blade Guard, so you can give them lethal sustain on 6s, or you take the company, the Deathwing equivalent of Blade Guard, and you give those guys OC +1, that unit will actually stay on the objective, and it's going to be hard to move because they have a 4-up invul. They hit hard, and nobody's going to be charging them. That's not a unit you can just charge and kill. Even 6-8 bound might have a tough time, especially with -1 to wound from the strat, which I'll get to in a second. Fulgus Magma. So Deathwing units, right? So this only goes on Terminators, basically. You can give it to Azrael with the lieutenant, give them up and down. So if you do take Azrael, which gives you CP, you keep it on the board in your base somewhere, and you take a lieutenant with him, and you basically just give this to the lieutenant for 20 points on turn 4 or 5, when you can no longer rapid ingress, deep strike, etc. You can take this unit, remove it, put it into strategic reserves, which means it can come from the board edge on turn 4 or 5, which is really good. The other thing you can do is, if you want, put this on a bike chaplain, and then remove that at the end of your opponent's turn, put it into reserves on like turn 1, rapid ingress it into your opponent's base, essentially. Now you can't do it on turn 1, okay? You can rapid ingress Terminators on turn 1 because it's happening from the board. But the main reason to use this is just you wait till turn 4 or 5 when you normally could not come behind your opponent's base, opponent's deployment zone. You bring them in, and that's when you start. That's why I said Azrael or like Hellblasters or Intercessors, because they're cheap. You take it on those guys because you come in 9 inches away, you shoot something, and you do a good amount of damage, and then Azrael unit actually gets play. It doesn't just sit on your home objective or safe, so you can keep getting Azrael CP. That's all this is. This is just 20 points at some point in the game. Azrael's going to finally go and do something. And if you need to, you can, if an ATV lives, or next turn you can actually get an ATV into combat, you can bring this unit in, deploy it behind your opponent's lines, make a 7-inch charge with a reroll, hopefully make it. And that's how I use that. One thing I want to say is aircrafts in Dark Angels are Deathwing, and aircrafts in your movement phase, they can end their movement within engagement range of enemy units. Engagement range does not mean you have to be able to fight your opponent. in combat, engagement range means you are within 1 inch. Doesn't matter if you can't fight each other. You are just within engagement range. Okay? So aircrafts automatically allow you to use your detachment rule of being within engagement range of, yeah, of the charge. Okay? So what you do is you rapid aggressor airplane at the end of your opponent's movement phase. You then move the airplane directly into their army, put the base down, and now whatever it's within 1 inch of is +2 to charge for your entire army. And they can't interact with the airplane because they can't shoot it at the moment. They can't charge it unless they have fly. And boom, you're in there. Who's really good for this? The Storm Raven gunship is good because it's a flying dreadnought, and in the detachment, if it shoots something, you get +1 to wound. So it helps buff your army. It's an aircraft. It can carry a Redemptor dreadnought, so you can actually move it up the board, drop the Redemptor. The Redemptor shoots something else, or shoots the thing that the aircraft shot with +1 to wound from the strat. You can get a Redemptor close to your opponent. You can't charge afterwards, but you can at least get there, start shooting things, do damage, and then next turn charge something. You also can have Hell Blasters inside of the airplane because it can carry a Redemptor plus, like, I think 14 Space Marine infantry models or 12, something like that. Eradicators can go into it, and then you can basically disembark the Eradicators after moving. They're now within melt the range of anything you want. Finally, if you start in hover mode, we go down to the strat, which is right here. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes a normal move, advance, or charge move, it can move horizontally to terrain features, which is Raven Wing models only. Okay, which means aircrafts and flying vehicles and mounted vehicles. What does this mean? This means on turn 1, if we go here, on turn 1, we can just move our aircraft 20 inches up here. Okay, we can move it 20 inches in a straight line. We can disembark Hell Blasters across this wall or on top of it and shoot anything behind here on turn 1. We can also move 20 inches in a straight line, and like in this case we can't end here because our base is too big, but we can just move in a straight line like anywhere we want and basically shoot anything we want. It's really good. If you play Search and Destroy, which is what I was playing today, look at this. 20 inches is straight into your opponent's base. If I go first and I can fit my Storm Raven like anywhere here, it can shoot everything inside this ruin. It can shoot everything inside this ruin. It's Search and Destroy, so your army's going to be lined up over here and over here. I can just move right here and shoot directly into everything here. I can disembark 10 Hell Blasters, Storm Raven, disembark the Redemptor Dreadnought onto this objective turn 1. That's basically a flying Redemptor with -1 damage with multi-metals, last cannons, Storm Bolters, which, by the way, Storm Bolters with twin linked are going to be wounding on 5s into the Oath target. Really good. Then I pay a CP, and because my gunship shot at something that wasn't my Oath target, all of my Deathwing units, which is like Azrael Squad or just anything with Deathwing, plus my Redemptor Dreadnought, gets +1 to wound against that thing for a CP. And you're going to have 2 CP because you have Azrael like in your base somewhere. And then boom, right? If you wanted to, you could also just drop Terminators with shooting. You could drop Deathwing Knights on this objective, and I don't know who's charging a -1 damage Redemptor, who's charging 5 Deathwing Knights protecting the Redemptor from any charges, and who's charging an aircraft. Well, it's not going to be an aircraft, but in hover mode tank with like 14 wounds, T9 I believe it is, or T10, with -1 damage. It's just not dying. And anybody who wants to move towards it, again, you're gonna have CP to just overwatch with Hellblasters, or Intercessors, or Stern Guard, or a Redemption Dreadnought for damage 3. Maybe you kill 1 or 2 guys. Right? It's really good. It's really good. So let's go back to our thing here. Okay. So when people looked at this detachment, going back to it now, what did we talk about? We talked about Illuminating Fire was what everybody talked about. +1 to wound if you combo off with your Rare Wing / Deathwing units. Good strat. But we have Oath the Moment, which gives +1 to wound now. So we don't need this anymore. Okay? Our initial idea was give something +1 to hit, +1 to wound, or with incursors, plus this, shoot at it, it dies. Awesome. Oath the Moment, the same target. We already get it now. So with this stratagem basically is irrelevant. And when we need it, it goes back to the Gilliman thing. The first thing gets oathed, reroll all hit rolls, +1 to wound. The second thing, we don't have rerolls to hit, but we have +1 to wound right here, so we don't need rerolls because for Space Marines we hit really good anyways. Or 2, we take an incursor unit for 80 points. We essentially just hit on 2s. We don't need rerolls again, right? And nothing in this list wants to fish for 5s or 6s. It's just trying to get as many hits through as possible, and then +1 to wound is going to help that out. So this is what I'm talking about. You don't need 2 reroll hit rolls. +1 to wound is all we needed. We used to pay 150 points for a Storm Speeder against monster and vehicles. Now we just oath something, and our efficiency has gone up. So when we're trying to kill something behind the wall with JPI, we're going to kill it. When we're trying to kill something with a Lancer or last cannons, we're going to kill it. Everything in our army is going to actually hurt stuff. We're not winning on 5s anymore. We're winning on 4s. So instead of 33%, it's 50%. Way better. Okay. The next thing is this strat. -1 to hit for Ray Wings, and this strat, Strength and Unity. -1 to hit for Ray Wing units. It's whatever. We already have smoke. It doesn't matter that much. So this is irrelevant. This is only if you're gonna try to combo your Raven Wing units next to your Deathwing units. You get double charged. You make them -1 to hit and wound. The Deathwing part of this is actually nice because 1 CP -1 to wound on our Terminators, on our Redemptor Dreadnoughts, means things are winning us on 4s. Units or things in the game don't have reroll wound rolls, and most things are winning our Redemptors on 3s. So winning on 4s means they could roll bad and our Redemptors actually live, especially if you like save a command point to reroll one of your saves, or you just pop Armor Contempt on top of it. Your durable units can actually survive, and it's going to be impactful. Unfortunately, it's only in the fight phase, but that's okay because most of the time your units are going to be charged, you're going to be charging, so you're going to want to use it. This, it can't be used with Armor Contempt, that's fine. This is not the best strat in this army. This detachment is not trying to kill you with firepower. +1 to wound doesn't make a army like, oh my god, it's so much damage. +1 to wound is just a, let's try to make you like wound a little bit better. Like this is almost like rerolling 1s to wound, kind of. Rerolling 1s and 2s to wound. It's not a big deal. What is a big deal are stratagems that no other detachment has access to. If you were to play Space Marines, your normal Deathwing units or Dark Angel units, your normal detachments, and your Dark Angel Codex or your Gladius lists, okay, everything that those guys have, we have it basically in here, like -1 to hit, -1 to wound, +1 to wound. All of the Dark Angel detachments, pretty much like the one where you just stand on objective, you get +1 to wound. It's not special. This is not special. We can get +1 to wound any way we want because we have so many options. There's two things that we don't have access to. There's two cute things. Well, three. But two of them are like more important than the other ones. The first thing that's very important, but not as important as the second one. This is the most important one, by the way. So let's just talk about the overpowering exaction. This stratagem is actually really good. Why is it really good? Well, let me show you this example, which came up today. I didn't use it because I don't want to be a dick, right? But the idea came up that if I have a Redemptor standing over here, alright? Let's just say it's standing right here. My opponent cannot shoot it. Cool. My opponent wants to kill it. Cool. My opponent is going to charge me with, I don't know, his Redemptor Dreadnought or whatever. Okay, so he charges me. I now use this 1 CP strat. What does this strat say? Command phase or start of the fight phase. This is important because you can use this twice in a row, which makes it extremely valuable. And it helps us score points. This is how it works. Select one enemy unit within engagement range of your unit. So your opponent charges you, they make the charge, start of the fight phase, you pay a CP, you select their unit, that unit must take a battle shock. If it's within range of your Deathwing / Ravenwing unit, which it's going to be because we're going to be putting Dreadnoughts onto the objective primarily, or maybe an ATV, you use a strat, and that unit has to make a battle shock test at -1. The important part is -1. And as soon as that happens, guess what? If their unit fails that battle shock test, no strats to actually kill you, aka no lance, no tank shock. Well, tank shocks can still work, but no lance, no rerolls, no -1 damage in combat, no interrupt, no nothing. On top of that, the important part is they're now battle shocked. What does this mean? They don't get points for taking you off the objective, for controlling the objective, and when your Dreadnought lives, ultimately, or whatever unit it is, like 3-man Outriders that charge it, it lives because it's durable to kill. They were trying to out OC you. Their unit's battle shocked. They can't control objective. Their OC value is 0. Your unit, which is Outrider, bikes, anything basically with this keyword, has OC. Your turn comes, you score the primary. They have failed to deny you points. Amazing. Also, if you charge your opponent's army and you don't kill their unit, or their unit was too durable to kill, right? I can send an ATV and charge their, I don't know, their, maybe not a Dreadnought, but let's say I charge the Dreadnought. Let's say the fight phase comes, I pop a CP, and I pop Strength and Unity, I give my ATV -1 to hit, their Dreadnought hits on 4s, they have 5 attacks, they miss with like 2 or 3 of them, they're trying to wound me, they wound me once or twice, I make 1 save, I fail 1, I take 3 damage, I live on 2 wounds, awesome. But they're battle shocked, they don't control that objective. Like, in their command phase, I'll use the strat, make them take a battle shock test, they'll fail it, and boom, they don't score primary. Right? Or I score my, like, control an objective that my opponent controlled. Either way, most importantly, it's going to be for when your opponent is charging you and trying to deny you points. Now, you might be asking, well, what happens if they don't charge you, they just stand on the objective and they deny you points this way? Well, great question. That goes to our second like best strat base. Well, not second, third. This is our second best strat. This is like our third best strat, niche scenario. But this lets you charge units that are infantry or Deathwing walkers. Okay, which mean Terminators, infantry with characters, and basically Dreadnoughts, which is what we're playing. You put a Dreadnought right here. You measure 6 inches. Boom. Anybody that ends its movement onto this objective. 2 CP, my Dreadnought is not charging you. My Dreadnought is not going to punch you in the face maybe use a 1 CP strat in the fight phase to make that you take that battle shock test that I'm talking about, combo it off with this one, and now guess what? I just punched your dreadnought to death, or I punched your like 5-man to death. You can't deny me OC by just ending movement on the objective. I will get into combat with you, especially a Brutalis Dreadnought. That thing will just charge you. It will do damage. If you charge, I can pay a CP for tank shock. Right, so tank shocking in your opponent's phase, I believe that works. Double check it. But most importantly, just they're going to put 5 scouts on the objective, try to deny you points. You're going to charge them. So now they have a problem. They have to kill this thing. They can't just out OC you. They literally have to charge it and kill it. And if they can't, well, they're basically not taking the objective away. It's really good. Okay, now the thing that I saw immediately, and the thing that this army does and nothing else in any Space Marine army does, okay? None of the other detachments, I believe, except for maybe the Raven Wing one, but forget that one. This strat right here is how to play Dark Angels in this detachment. Your Raven Wing units, aka, I'm going to tell you, not Outriders. We don't care about Outriders, okay? What we care about is our Land Raider, our speeders, Storm Speeders. You take a Storm Speeder, and here's what you do. There's a Storm Speeder. Now this is the old ones, but for reference sake, you take one, you pay the CP, it moves 12 inches or 14 inches, goes onto the other side of this wall. It now shoots everything hiding behind the wall. Awesome. They just lost all their units. If you play on other objectives, like this, where your opponent is, hey, I'm going to hide behind the wall, control the objective with like 5 guys. Right? These guys are OC3, they move up through the wall, shoot the unit dead with like 5 meltas. OC3, hold the objective, and you're done. So these guys start denying points. They can go through walls, so their movement is really, really useful. And also, your opponent can't, like, if you just put them here, you can just move them like 12 inches, 14 inches. Like on this map, your opponent can't hide behind this wall anymore. Right? They can't move block you with like 1 or 2 inch charges. They can't screen you. This thing just goes through the wall and shoots you very hard. This thing can rapid ingress in the corner because it has deep strike built in, and then just move 12 inches past the wall and then shoot you. The main thing to deny rapid ingress screens from shooting units is to basically screen out this part so they can't move through you and around, because you don't have to you don't have to screen the wall. It's to your advantage, but this army lets you go through walls. Another thing, if you play this army, fixed is, as I keep saying, the best thing for scoring points. Okay? If you're trying to score points, fixed is superior to tactical in terms of scoring. You take this guy, okay, he can go through walls. Let's go back to Search and Destroy, where this makes more sense. You go Search and Destroy, you put this here. Turn 1, you move it up the board, you advance it, you get to this table quarter. You don't even have to go that far, you can go right here, okay? Which is, what's the distance? Yeah, so you just need to roll a 2 on the advance, and boom. You might not even need to roll a 2, because the base. Yeah, might need to roll a 1 on the advance, and you are automatically getting engaged on all fronts on this one, going through a wall. Your ATV can then move over here, right? If this guy doesn't roll a good on the advance roll, well, your ATV is next to it. Your ATV moves 12, and it can now advance over and get you engaged on all fronts. So you can make an entire game plan on just sending a speeder up one side, a ATV up the other side, scoring engage on all fronts on both sides, and then your redemptors stand here, your scouts stand here, and your base is secured. You score all your points on engage. Our plan already exists of taking our opponent off of objectives. That's a core game plan of playing 40k, and it's also a rule set that we can use to our advantage with the strats that we have. The strats and the playstyle that we have, we can really dictate what objective our opponent's going to control. We can cause battle shock tests. We can shoot them off. We can go through walls. And we can also make it really difficult for our opponent to deny our primary. That's the two main things. This army is good at denying your opponent primary because of mobility. It's also good at holding primary because of our strats. Okay? And nothing has to do with damage. Everything has to do with that they can't deny us primary because we can charge them in their own turn, and we have durable units, and we cause battle shock tests that ultimately make it that they can't kill a durable unit, and that they can't out-OC us. Even if they reduce us to just Azrael will hold the objective for us. Really good. I'm sure eventually the Lion is going to get Deathwing and Ravenwing keywords. I don't know if they're going to do it 100%. They probably would have done it already. But I think in the January update that they're going to do that they probably weren't ready for, and they overlooked the Lion's keywords for the detachment. They're going to give it to them, at least the Deathwing keyword, and then all of a sudden he becomes a lot more useful in this detachment. Now, I've been running a lot of the Space Marine detachments with no Dark Angel, no Blood Angel, no special characters for the +1 to wound. I played a game today. What I found was armies that get +1 to wound, we don't need them anymore. Like, we don't need the strats, we don't need anything, because we already have Oath of Moment for +1 to wound. Because of that, the strat for +1 to wound is technically useless. I mean, it's not useless, we just don't need to use it anymore. And on top of that, that's kind of it actually. We just don't need it. So we don't need to actually take Ravenwing units. We don't need to like combo off anything. We can just take mostly Deathwing units. We'll take ATVs because they're cheap and they're good for scoring. Right? So that's why they're there. But Oath of Moment just gives us +1 to wound, and it's really good. Yeah, that's what I found. Also, there's a list building concept, but don't run triple Redemptor Dreadnoughts. Triple Redemptor Dreadnoughts are not there to, like, -1 damage doesn't exist. Okay, when you play Redemptor Dreadnoughts, do not think of them as -1 damage, because your opponent will just bring a Lancer and pop your Redemptor in half. So don't use them because in your imagination you think that a Redemptor is going to survive everything. That's not the case. Okay, nothing's going to live. The Redemptor Dreadnought is there for basically having a 2-up save, having cover, being a bit durable, and then being a melee piece that you don't mind going onto an objective and charging something. That's what it's there to do. It's there to go on an objective and charge something and kill it, and is there so that if your opponent doesn't have super long range guns, you can keep it on this objective and your opponent won't be able to shoot at it with multiple tanks. Like, maybe one Lancer can shoot at it and maybe it doesn't kill it because you pop AOC on that one thing and it lives with like 4 wounds. Cool. Right? It's going to live 1 activation. It's not going to live 2 activations. It's not going to live a JPI unit moving onto it, throwing a grenade, dealing, let's say, 1 above average. 4 mortals is down to 8 wounds. It charges, does 3 mortals, is down to 5 wounds. And then it just punches it to death. And then there goes a Redemptor, okay? It's not worth it. Take 1, take 2, do not take 3. Do not skew into something. Space Marines are not a skew army. Space Marines are a toolbox army that is trying to score a lot of points. So anything that is going to be super durable, don't take a bunch of it. Think to yourselves, how many times do I actually need this into whatnot? If you're going to a tournament and every single person brings damage to melee armies, then sure, man, like take 3 Redemptors and win all your games, because every single melee army's damage 2 goes to damage 1 and they can't kill it. But I'm telling you, even then, the melee armies on good players will understand how to deal with it. Like I just showed you. Take JPI, throw a grenade, do mortals on the charge, shoot some plasma pistols into it, and the Redemptor Dreadnought will die. It's not that hard. Okay. So that's that. So I just showed you guys the trick of charging. I showed you guys the battle shock test, which is really nice, and you can use it in 2 different phases, which makes it even better. And then I showed you the real strategy, and the best thing to use this with is land speeders. So go out there, look at land speeders, think about the aircraft a little bit, look at the Storm Raven gunship, and take those. And then because you don't need this +1 AP, +1 to wound strat as much, or you don't need Oath of Moment to give you +1 to wound because you have the strat, you're free to take Dark Angel characters in this detachment because you don't need +1 to wound on the Oath target. You have the strat to give it to you. But it's up to you. You either spend the CP to get +1 to wound, or you save the command point by taking Oath of Moment, and then when you need it, you spend +1 CP in specific games, once a game, whatever it is, depending on your build. Same thing with Deathwing Knights. I'm not taking multiple Deathwing Knights. I think Deathwing Knights are a linchpin unit / technical piece where your opponent cannot deal with them because they have -1 damage, and they're really good into some matchups, they're really bad into other matchups. Okay, the lists that people were playing back in the day of 3 Deathwing Knights, Gladius, Eradicates with Fire Discipline, that army was, number 1, it was Space Marines being played by very good Space Marine players, so it was performing. Everybody else who played it was only winning about 42% of their games. Like 37 to 42% was the win rate. Was not very good. They don't understand how to play it. Skewing your army into that style only works when you know exactly what you're doing, what you're going to go up against in the meta, and you have high player skill. And then that army, like, with skew will work. But even then it was a stat check army. If you just came across ignore mods or anything like that, the army just died. And the only reason it could play like a close-ish game was because you're playing Space Marines. You're by design trying to score points. So by design, Space Marines play good Warhammer. We just are overcosted. And what are Deathwing Knights trying to do is survive a shooting phase or 2 so that you can get more point efficiency out of them. Usually, you bring 2,000 points of Space Marines, and after the first 2 turns, you're playing 1,500 points of Space Marines left over. With Deathwing Knights, after that first shooting phase, you're playing with like 1,800 points of Space Marines left over, right? So you are trying to survive so you can have the same unit left to use, while Xenos armies have more units. All of the units die, but they have more, so they can keep playing the game. Space Marines don't have that luxury. When we do, we spam scouts and we spam ATVs to basically do what Xenos armies do. Okay, that's enough about Deathwing and Dark Angels, okay? I still think the original Dark Angels detachment, which is the Battle Shock test / has all the cool enhancements, has the shoot back strat. The original detachment is really nice for a lot of shooting, like repulsor executioners, etc. With +1 to wound, it probably got even better. But because if somebody shoots your Hellblaster squad, you can just pay the CP and shoot them back if they kill like 3 models, as if it was your shooting phase, which is really good. It also gives you 1 CP plus 1 OC, minus 1 to wound strat is also in there. So I do like that strat, that detachment. This detachment, I like it only because of this 1 CP strat where you can just keep scoring, shoot your opponent in the face with your super fast moving units, and then you have like 1 or 2 Redemptors sitting on an objective where your opponent just can't deal with them, or you have 5 Terminators sitting on an objective where your opponent can't step on the objective because the second they step on it, you pay 2 CP, Inescapable Wrath, punch them in the face, and they're dead. Yeah, if you play a lot of big chunky Terminators, the obvious one is you wrap against Terminators, you charge them, you try to wrap and tag other units. When that unit falls back and it can't get outside of 6 inches of you, like Tau, because they fall back 7 inches, but they were in between like a bunch of your models, have to fall back. They're still within like 4.5 inches of you. They don't kill your whole Terminator unit. At the end of their charge phase, 2 CP, charge back into them, do more damage in their turn, and then charge them again, right? You can win games against shooting armies like that. Really just keep pushing them back if you're super durable. Okay, Deathwing, done. Dark Angels are done. Liberius Detachment. Okay, before I get to Liberius Detachment, I already talked about Blade Angels, actually about just taking a bunch of small units, so I actually don't have to talk about that. If I did miss something about Blade Angels, or you're wanting to hear something extra about Blade Angels, just reach out to me or type in chat a question or two you had, and I'll probably answer it. But overall, Blood Angels, nothing's changed. We're still the same. I'd recommend you do not go down the idea of taking 4 to 6 tanks in a Blood Angel army. That's not what Blood Angels are designed to do in their main detachment, which is the +2 strength, +1 attack. Okay. The assault force one. I forget the name. But in that detachment, do not take 4 to 6 tanks. I know that there's YouTubers out there who went to Worlds, took tanks, right? They're playing on GW terrain, took a lot of tanks, but don't do it. The highest success Blood Angel players that went there took like 2x3 Sanguinary Guard, etc., and were a bit more melee oriented and trading oriented. Blood Angels is not an army you take. Then you take a melee detachment and then you add 600, 1200 points of tanks. That's not what they're meant to do. So play to your strengths. Don't try to compensate for it with shooting. Okay, you're gonna lose those games anyways. You can 100% have like some shooting. That's fine. That's normal Space Marine stuff. But rely on your Sanguinary Guard. Rely on your 10-man Deathwing, not Deathwing, Death Company. Rely on your 6-man Sanguinary Guard with Dante, and all of that melee damage. All that melee damage, and all of your your Outriders, your Scouts, your JPI, all getting that extra damage increase will help you out. Okay, Liberius. This is the one that is new for us. So let's talk about this. I haven't played this one yet. People are obviously kind of like hyped about it only because of Fusillade with Sternguard to get, Fusillade to get anti-monster, anti-vehicle 5+. I believe that does around 20 to 25 devastating wounds on average to a vehicle or monster with Sternguard, with the enhancement onto the oath target. Okay, number one, either this will get nerfed, like I said earlier in the video, because that's what they always do when there's a devastating wound combo. The community freaks out and GW nerfs it, and then all of a sudden this will just say excluding devastating wound weapons, and then we're back to step one of it being garbage. Um, so yeah, there's that. By the way, everything in our army, because of the +1 to wound on Oath of Moment, already wounds things on 5s. So we don't need this enhancement in the first place. The enhancement is very good though, because it's only 15 points, which is the same point cost. Well, which is way cheaper than Fire Discipline. Fire Discipline gives you sustain 1. In the Dev Doctrine, this gives you sustain 1 in the Fire Discipline gives you sustain 1 at all times. This gives you sustain 1 in the Pyromancy Discipline, which is +1 AP. You can go into it whenever you want. Super good. And it gives you +6 inches to your range if you are in the telekinesis telekinesis 1. So I do like the 6-inch range. Unfortunately, we don't have a Gravis Psyker. If we did, I would immediately put this onto a Eradicator squad so we could get Melta. Okay, because getting Melta is when Eradicators do damage. Without Melta, Eradicators don't do damage. It's just super unreliable. So you always want to get Eradicators into Melta range for the +2 damage at all times. We can't do that. We can do that in Death Watch. Okay, so that's that. It's a good enhancement. You're definitely going to take it at the moment. It's cheap. The rest of these I don't care about. If you're going to take this one, you kind of just take it on a dev squad with las cannons, because you can just keep them. You can keep them like on this, be blown up 18, keep them on a flank, aiming down sight the middle or back here, aiming all the way down over here, aiming down this way. This is the wrong map to display it on, but my point is you can keep it far away, especially if you're playing GW terrain, and just have 4 lance cannons aimed down the side, shooting all the way. Okay? And being blown up. That's really good. You can just pay a CP, put your unit into that doctrine, and you're a loan up. Awesome. Unfortunately, that doesn't bear well with the fact that this unit doesn't want to get ore washed. That's what it's there for. So it's weird. Everything in this is a little bit weird. For example, Fusillade works on 2 different disciplines. This one is trying not to get overwatched by getting in close, but then also staying away from your opponent. It's another weird thing. Right, so there's a lot of weird things in this one. Overall, I think we're gonna have to wait and see how this works out. So I think this is on par with Gladius as far as Gladius's current form goes, because it lost Fire Discipline. It lost all of its damage output, basically. The reason why you took Gladius was to do damage with Fire Discipline. Otherwise, you're just moving fast and getting points that way. I think Gladius is still solid. It's still going to be really good. But I think now this is comparable to it, and you're actually going to, with the +2 move, you're kind of getting advance and shoot, kind of. With the low roll, most Space Marine weapons can gain the assault keyword, or a character will give it to them. Rerolling once to hit army wide is really good. This is like what you want to be staying in most of the time. And having +1 AP is the same thing with Gladius. Like, you can just basically up any damage you're trying to do, whether it be strength, whether it be range attacks, whether it be durability, with -1 to strength, right? This detachment has as much flexibility as a Gladius detachment in different ways. And so even this telepathic discipline, if you guys don't know, like, this is really good when you're versing like Keeper of Secrets, which always has -1 to hit. Eventually, I'm sure at some point units are going to get -1 to hit and -1 to wound, kind of like the Dark Angels detachment, like the new Death Guard. So this unit, or this telepathy, basically already counters Death Guard super good. So I think this is on par or close to Gladius, and it's 100% worth trying out. But like Gladius, it's a little bit complicated, and it's gonna take a few reps tinkering around with getting used to which doctrines you want to activate, when to activate X doctrine on X unit, how much CP do you need, and what is the correct unit and how much damage you need compared to how much scoring you need. Because Gladius only needs 2 units that deal damage. Most Space Marine armies only need 2. We really actually want 3, but we just can't because we're too expensive. And so with this army, we're going to see are the Terminators worth taking once we get to try them out. And also Space Marines are an army that attack the meta. We don't make the meta, because as soon as we make the meta, everything in the game is damage 2, kills all Space Marines. If Terminators are really good, because all Space Marines take Terminators, all of a sudden damage 3 comes into the game, and Space Marines are very, very easy to kill. So what we're best at doing is killing other units and taking our list with multiple tiny options that there's no reason to counter Space Marines, unless we skew really hard into like Terminators or tanks or Horde. If we're not skewing, nobody in the game can tech into us in like damage output relative terms. But we can have multiple different cool units to attack them, because Tau can't change their game plan from a shooting army into a different type of list. Grey Knights can't just go from a maximum scoring army into like a super tank army. Like even when they do, Space Marines are just very good at, do I need to kill this one thing? We kill it. Do I need to tank something important? We can set up a plan that helps us tank it via move blocks, via cover, armor contempt, rerolling the saving throws, and so on. Okay, so the strats in this one that are pretty interesting. Number 1 is, which one? What does this do? Oh, so the +2 strength is okay. I don't care about it that much. I'm gonna be honest. But this one is interesting because 1 infantry unit from your army that is within 18 inches of another Psyker army has not been selected to fight. What this means is that you can send JPI out as long as they're within 18 inches of your Psyker unit in your base. You'll get +2 strength. What does this do for us? Essentially gives us +1 to wound. What does this do for us even further is with Oath target, we're +2 to wound basically because we're strength 6, and then we're winning things on 3s, and we're winning things on 2s. Extremely useful. It's another way to gain, basically it just reads in the fight phase, get +1 to wound without getting +1 to wound. Which makes breakpoints really good. It also allows us to Oath one thing, try and kill that, and then charge another thing, try and kill that. And if we're playing a mixed arms army, which is what Space Marines generally are, and this detachment is, we are going to shoot one thing with our Oath target, kill it, and then charge with our other unit, giving it Iron Arm to basically gain +1 to wound. That's how it's going to work. So this is a really good thing. I know people want to run it on aggressors. I don't think you run it on aggressors because aggressors are overcosted and they weren't good with Fire Discipline in terms of like how expensive that unit was. Basically, and they're not going to be good just because they gain +2 on the charge. Blood Angels, you don't take aggressors either because you don't care about getting +2 on the charge. In fact, Blood Angels give them +2 on the charge, plus lance, plus lethal hits, plus extra attacks, and you still don't take them. Sensory Assault. This is actually a really good strat. This is probably something you're going to be using all the time, is -2 to the charge. So get ready to spam this and set up plays in the moon phase, because this is again a deny your opponent the chance to deny you primary, because they can't charge you onto the object. They can't charge onto the objective, and they can't out OC you or kill the unit. So that's good. They also can't just deep strike 6 inches away, then charge you like the new Grey Knights, like demons, because 8-inch charge, rerollable. It's pretty much 50-50, but it can still fail half the time. So they're going to have to calculate that, and they might not go for the play, because if they do fail the charge, they are just going to die. So that's good. Armor Contempt. I haven't talked about Armor Contempt yet. I'm going to talk about it now. If you guys have gotten Space Marine coaching by me, you guys know I don't use Armor Contempt ever. It doesn't make a big difference. I'm extremely strong on my CP discipline, where I can play all my games without ever using strats. I don't care. As long as I'm playing against like normal Warhammer players, I don't actually need strats to play like give someone a good game. So this strat with the new nerf was, I think, unneeded, and now that they have nerfed it, a lot of archetypes are gonna get like spammy archetypes or worse. For you who play Grey Knights, your Grey Knights are gonna die, your Terminators are gonna die, and your Redemptors are gonna die, because AP3 is actually gonna be AP3 and not AP1 for the whole phase. Okay, so really strong nerf, and just use this mostly in the fight phase now. When one thing gets to fight you, you pop Armor Contempt to maybe keep your thing alive, mostly into Redemptors or anything kind of durable. Or if they're trying to trade trash to trash, you pop AOC, it maybe keeps you alive if you don't need the extra command points. It's good in those niche scenarios where if it works out for you, it's going to be really good. If it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. And if you, that's pretty much it. Fiery Shield, garbage. I don't care about this at all. Mounted units, don't care. Persistent, this one's really good because 1 CP just lethal his ignore cover. We're going to be using this pretty much all the time, just to get extra damage output. Awesome. This is just like getting +1 to wound basically, so really good. This unit, this is our grenade strat. Okay, this is like basically the main thing that I want to talk about. And the detachment is, you take an Incursor unit. Incursors are really good. Take them. You move them up the board. You chuck a grenade. It does average of 3 mortals. You pop OCP with the Phobos Librarian in the Incursor unit. It does 3 mortal wounds on average because it's another psychic grenade basically. You toss the Incursor Mine. It does another D3 mortals. That's 2 mortals. That one unit does 8 mortal wounds, and if it's against a vehicle, it's 10 mortal wounds, technically 11 mortal wounds, okay? 11 mortal wounds from one unit for 2 CP is super good. On top of its like +1 to hit benefits, and the fact that, yeah, and also this is an 18-inch grenade, which means that whoever is actually using this, you can take solo Terminator Librarians for 65 points, deep strike them everywhere you want. You can keep them in the open because your opponent's not going to want to shoot a 5 wound 2-up save in cover, scanning, looking around the map with maybe Armor Contempt or just a 4-up invul. They're not going to shoot at it because as a 4-up invul, it's got a 2-up save in cover. Nothing's going to kill it from like far away. So if they actually want to kill a Terminator, they're going to have to shoot something that actually kills the Terminator, especially a 5 wound Terminator. So this is really good. Also, if you play Ultramarines, Tigerius is a Psyker. He's extremely powerful, one of the best units in the whole game for its point cost. He's as strong as 5 Hellblasters by himself. He's much better than 5 Stern Guard by himself, pretty much, or does the same amount of damage. If you take him in a unit of Stern Guards, Stern Guard give him reroll wound rolls, and now his damage to 2d6 shots rerolls wound rolls. That's amazing because he's 5 Hellblasters by himself. He is so strong. Okay, for 75 points, insane. And he's a psyker, and he has multiple rules of giving the unit -1 to hit all the times. He can use Overwatch and Heroic Intervention, etc. strats on top of it, even if you've already used them. Really good. Okay, ignoring that point though, Mephiston is also psyker, by the way, so if you take Mephiston, he can be lone op and chuck grenades at people and still have advance to charge. He can also gain, he can stand in the open, be lone op, and then also just always be within range of your army to give the +2 strength. So that's cool. Lots of interesting stuff here. Look at your armies, look at psychers. I believe Space Wolves also have some psychers, if I remember correctly, but I know some of them went to Legends. When Space Wolves come out, or the new chapter comes out, especially their codex, I'm sure they're going to get some psychers. And if we ever get a Liberian Dreadnought again in Space Marines, it's going to be great. Okay, that's all I want to talk about this. Everything here is very technical. You're going to want to get coaching with me on the Liberia's Conclave if you're really excited about this and really want to go down this route with anything, because it's going to actually take a sit down of me talking along. This is already a long video, and this talking about this in depth is going to be even longer because you got to talk about every single unit and so on. Okay, there's one more thing I want to talk about. Okay, so the hot sauce. Okay, Wapedia Space Marines. Okay, so we're going to quickly talk about Fire Discipline got nerfed. What the hell do we new down now that we don't have Fire Discipline? And I already said at the beginning that some of the best stuff in this game at the moment, in 10th edition, is to get critical hits. Well, what I've been running the entire goddamn codex in the background a lot, and if you know me, I've been running Gilliman when he used to be able to do the same strat twice. So I've been abusing all these rules the entire time while nobody else has, because they've been basically just following YouTube, and they've been basically just playing Gladius because Gladius, like I said, gave you options. It didn't give you damage output. But if you're looking for damage output because you lost it in Gladius because it doesn't have the damage anymore, we have actual damage options. Especially now that Oath of Moment gives +1 to wound, we don't need to take a hammer strike or set up different type of like chain combos to get that +1 to wound. We used to be able to had to do pay points, a lot of points, or don't move, do something else to get that +1 to wound. The first thing I'm going to talk about is Animal Siege Force, because this is the big one. We go to the strategy page. I'm not talking about everything. I'm just going to go to the strategy page. Battle Drill Recall. Okay. Look at this. Until the end of the phase, ranged weapon and equipped bear models have sustained 1 ability. If your unit remains stationary this turn, until the end of the phase, your units or models in the unit make a range attack. A successful unmodified hit roll of 5+ is a critical hit. Okay. Very simply, all this says is this is Fire Discipline, which means you get critical hits on 5s, sustain 1. What do? Take anything you want, period. 6 Eradicators, Biologist, Apothecary, and you get sustain lethal 5s. Take Intercessors and a Lieutenant, you get sustain lethal 5s. If you don't want the lethal hits, just pop the strat, critical hits on 5s, and you're good to go. It's very, very easy to do that. Okay, so this is one of the best strats that Space Marines have, And I've been playing this forever. If you like Devastator Centaurians, they also abuse this thing because, again, this says any unit. It doesn't say infantry. It doesn't say anything mounted. You can use this on a Repulsed Executioner, which has 42 shots. That will get full rerolls to hit, +1 to wound into your oath target, sustain crit 5s. It's going to obliterate whatever it shoots at. Okay? You can take a Redemptor if you're just standing on an objective. You want to shoot down something, go for it. A Reaper. Stern Guard veterans, by the way, also. In terms of damage output, normal intercessors with 40 shots with sustained lethal 5s do about 20 damage to... They do about 16 to 20 damage to a greater demon. So that's amazing. They will they won't kill a Land Raider because of the 2-up save, but anything with a 4-up save, that's 20 damage, which means, yeah, that's huge. They also, so Hellblasters are another reason to take this, because all of a sudden with +1 to wound, you're winning on 4s, and sustain crit 5s, you're going to do so much damage, your units are going to die. They're also going to shoot on death with sustain crit 5 lethal hits, do more damage, and it's going to be great. So this is the hot sauce. This is what you want to be using. Secondly, right here, no threat too great. If you have the CP, if you're playing Azrael, Gilliman, whatever, Calgar, if you really want reroll wound rolls, old target, winning it on 4s, guess what? Reroll the wound roll. Boom. You're doing all the damage you want. You can also use this on a Repulsed Executioner. 42 shots, sustained crit 5s, with rerolling all wound rolls. You're going to do so much damage to stuff. It's going to be unreal. Armor Contempt is useless, as we talked about. Rigid Discipline is really good. Why? Because people love to tank your tag your stuff. And also, look at this. One unit from your army that is within engagement range. Guess what? That doesn't say infantry again. None of these strats say infantry. They just work on tanks. You can fall back with your tank in your opponent's turn, which means they can't tag you. Your tank falls back. Your turn starts. You don't move in your movement phase. Hail of Vengeance comes on. Not Hail of Vengeance. Battle Drill Recall comes to life. There is a thing where if you do fall back, you do have to end on an objective or wholly within your deployment zone. That's perfectly fine, because if you're versing, let's say, Wolf Jail, they would charge you, tag you, well, just fall back into your deployment zone and blow up their whole goddamn squad. And great, there's a giant hole. Their unit is not durable against this type of firepower. Not one step backwards is extremely, extremely powerful, and I'll tell you a combo with this. So you take a Biologist Apothecary. Number one, you take a Biologist Apothecary. You give it the Indomitable Fury. On a 2+, the bearer comes back to life. Great. You take it, it costs 90 points for a 70 points for a Biologist, and no, 90 points for a Biologist, you're good to go. Okay, it's not a Gravis unit, it comes back to life. Why do you put it on a Biologist Apothecary? Because a Biologist Apothecary has OC3 base, and if that unit that he's attached to ever kills any single model, you just gotta kill one model in melee combat with any unit in that unit, basically, any model in that unit, he becomes OC9. Awesome. So your Gravis guy's OC9. You charge something, you killed it, you're OC9. Your opponent proceeds to charge you, kills you, you come back to life on a 2+, you're there, your unit's dead, but your guy's OC9, you hold the objective. Let's say they have so much OC on there that you need more than OC9. Well, this is where this not one step backwards comes into play. You double the OC characteristic of that unit. That Biologist Apothecary is OC18. Ridiculous. Nothing is taking that off. the point besides like a Norn emissary with a +3 OC enhancement. It's not going away. Which means, again, we go back to Space Marines want to score points. Your opponent cannot deny you that primary point. He is going to be on the back foot. He's not going to score his objectives. He's not going to score his points. You're going to score your points. He can't take you off the primary. If you take intercessors or heavy intercessors, which goes back to the data slate of all those characters in like White Scars, Salamanders, whatever, that gave extra OC to certain units. If you take this detachment and you put Infernus Marines on an objective that your opponent has to get onto and charge you, you can just Overwatch, kill them. If they don't kill your whole squad, 1 CP, not 1 step backwards, double your OC fucking 4 on every single Infernus Marine. If you take intercessors, your OC 4 base on every single guy. If you take heavy intercessors, which are basically unkillable, even if 2 guys survive against, like, let's say a greater demon attacks and a greater demon's OC 5 kills your guys, you have 2 guys left. Your OC 4, their OC 5, they take the objective. 1 CP, OC 8. They're not taking off of it. Like, it's not happening. And yeah, super good. So this strat is amazing. You can also use it on Terminators by rapid ingressing them onto the middle objective, onto an objective in the open. Even if your opponent kills like half the Terminator squad, you can just double your OC, become OC 20. If you have an ancient, OC even like 30, and hold the objective. So it's really, really good. It was even better when you could rapid ingress 3 away on Inceptors, because Inceptors, your opponent will be like, I have OC like 5 on the objective. Well, you rapid ingress 3 inches away, OC 3, your turn, 1 CP, OC 6. You take away OC 5 that easily. And greater demons usually couldn't get onto the middle of the objective or screen it off completely if the objective was like behind a wall or something. So you could 1 CP, 3-inch deep strike in your opponent's turn onto the other side of the objective where they couldn't charge you. Just barely on it with all 3 models. You don't take it off of them, but in your turn, 1 CP, OC6, you score the primary and you win games like that. This is one of the best detachments in Space Marines. And guess what? Their rule of you have to stay stationary, of their detachment rule, because you gain the heavy keyword, you're going to be stationary quite a bit in this one. If you take tanks or redemptors, all your redemptors and tanks are hitting on 2s. If you're in combat, you basically ignore the being in combat because you got heavy, so you can just be in combat with your tanks, your redemptors, and still hit on 3s. So you don't even need to take incursors, but I will still take incursors because they're so good. And then if you already have the heavy keyword, you get +1 to wound. So again, just like your other detachments, there are ways to get +1 to wound when you're trying to kill 2 or 3 units. If your opponent is charging you with, let's say, Shalaxi, I can rapid ingress my Eradicators 9 inches away from Shalaxi. My turn comes up. I don't move them. They have +1 to wound, reroll hits, wound, damage, and Shalaxi. I will not use battle recall on the unit, but if I want to, I have sustained lethal 5s, +1 to wound against that unit without having Oath of Moment on it. So as you can see here, there's a trend. Oath of Moment is good, really good, but a lot of our good detachments have ways to get +1 to wound on other things, and these detachments essentially have critical hits on 5s, which can be used on anything. So when your Eradicator unit in Gladius died and you couldn't get Fire Discipline anymore, in this detachment you have Fire Discipline on crit 5s at all times. And one of the best units in this army are Desolation Marines. Why are Desolation Marines so good? Because you go back to here You take your Desolation Marines. Look, see this L in our base? You start the Desolation Marines on the top floor with all 5 of them. This gives them plunging fire, which means that they're AP1. Their rule is if they don't move, they get ignores cover. So they're AP1 ignore cover. You pop 1 CP. That's... I'll show it to you here. So let's take 5 Space Marines. They're on this point, okay? I got my Desolation Marines right here. And I'll put all the buffs onto something. Let's put 5 dice. We got 5 Marines standing in our opponent's base. Or let's say they're standing like over here. I don't care where they are. They're right here. Okay, Desolation Marines. We're going to put Oath of Moment on that target. Let's get our Oath thing. Reroll all hit rolls. Oath of Moment target onto this, right? Cool. Here's the buff. We pay a CP. We have... I'm going to write down. We have Oath. So we have reroll hit rolls. Reroll hits. We have +1 wound from Oath. We also have sustain crit 5s. We have +1 AP. We also have no cover. Okay, we also have blast, by the way, for anyone that wants to like know. That's a lot of rules on one unit. That's insane. So what this looks like is we get 5 dice. Actually, let's just see what the Vanguard launch does. Okay, now this is not gonna be 1-to-1. I might roll good here, I might roll super bad. But here we go. Vanguard launcher is on the Sergeant. It's a strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage. What does this mean to Space Marines? We're going from winning on 3s to winning on 2s. We have plunging fire. We have AP 2, which puts them at a 5-up save because we ignore cover. So, Vanguard launcher, D6 shots, blast, 5 shots, +1, 6 shots for blast. Okay, rolled a bit better here. Hitting on 4s because indirect, full rerolls. We're always rerolling everything because we're going for sustain on 5s. Boom. So we miss with 2, but those 2 come back in for sustain and 1 more for the third one. That's 7 shots at AP 2, damage 2. Ignore cover. Okay, wounding on 2s, by the way. That's as good as a Whirlwind. The Desolation Marines come with the Whirlwind. The only difference is that Whirlwind has a little bit more strength and has D6 plus 3 shots instead of D6 shots. But that doesn't matter. Okay, so we're winning on 2s. We miss with these 2. That's fine. If you take a Lieutenant in Phobos armor with combi weapon, you can pick an objective and reroll 1s to wound onto that objective, which makes this even more efficient. Okay, which you're probably going to take. I suggest all of you guys playing Space Marines take the combi Lieutenant, put him into your list, reroll 1s to wound on an objective, and he can also score you points. He's low up, so I know Chris, you play Mephiston in your list. Well, you don't play Mephiston, you play the combi Lieutenant. He's really good. I didn't comment on it in your video, but I'm sure you're gonna watch this, and it's really good. So yeah, just keep running it. Okay, so 5 saves at AP2, 5-up saves, fails every single one. Boom. I just killed 5 Space Marines. Okay, let's ignore the Vanguard launcher. Let's pretend it failed completely. 5 D3 shots, blast from everybody else. That's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 shots. Cool, 10 shots. Plus blast, 5 more shots. Awesome. 15 shots. We are 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 15 shots. Okay. Hitting on 4s, rerolling everything because we have sustain lethal sustain hits on 5s. Reroll the 4s too because we're fishing for like as many shots as possible. We miss with these 3, but we get 22 goddamn hits. Like, are you serious? 22 AP1 ignore cover shots. Okay, strength 4, wounding Space Marines on 4. Right? If they were elves or Sisters of Battle, they're just dead. With AP1 ignore cover, the Space Marine guy is saving on 4s. Okay, he saves a lot here, but it doesn't matter because look at this. 9 failed saves. That's 9 damage. That kills 4 Space Marines and 1 guy's hurt. That's insane. This unit is ludicrous. And by the way, if you don't like the Desolation Marine and you want to take Whirlwinds, or you want to add like a Whirlwind plus you want to add the Desolation Marines because you want the Whirlwind to fire first, so they have to pop AOC then, or they don't. Because AOC only lasts for one thing, you can fire the Desolation Marine second, or fire the Desolation Marine first. Maybe it kills, maybe they pop AOC, maybe they don't, and then fire the Whirlwind somewhere else. Also, if the Whirlwind does shoot something, they have to take a Battle Shock test, which means they can fail the Battle Shock test, which is really nice. But again, if you just have a Whirlwind, you don't have Desolation Marines, or you don't want to take Desolation Marines, because you just want the straight up AP2 Whirlwind D6 plus 3 shots, and having a tank is nicer for you, guess what? This thing works on tanks, because any unit in your army. So your Whirlwind gets critical hits on 5s, sustained hits, full rerolls to hit. AP2 goes to AP1 because they have cover, and you're good to go. Super, super solid. I love it. If you want to add more buffs, Space Marines have many ways to add buffs in the speeders for extra AP, ignoring cover, +1 to wound against units. And yeah, the Whirlwind's also strength 8, I believe. So if you're shooting a monster, you're going from wounding on 5s to wounding on 4s, which is really good. If you take a Whirlwind, let's say you're playing Asriel, you pop the shots, you roll 1, you command reroll it, you into 2 plus 3 shots, Oath of Moment, 5 shots into a Greater Demon, rerolling everything because you're looking for 5s. Did really bad there, but 2 go back in, and then you're winning it on that. This one misses, but if you have the Combi Lieutenant, you can reroll it, right? Misses anyways. 3 saves. If it's a Greater Demon, they either take 4 or 2 damage. Either way, it's fine. If they're a tank and they're saving on 4s, it might take more damage. It's really good. It can also kill ATVs, so if you're expecting the meta to change where ATVs are in the meta, your strength 8 gun with +1 to wound is going to put ATVs on 5-up saves at damage 2 apiece. And it's gonna hurt them quite a bit. So yeah, I like Desolation Marines a lot more because they ignore cover and their AP, and they have a lot of shots. A lot of shots is really good. Yeah, so that's the hot sauce in that detachment. Salamander's detachment is the other one. Why? Oh, so Ironstorm is another one. This one's really simple, guys. It's just take Ironstorm, give lethal hits to a vehicle, pay 2 CP, and give it Mercy as weakness for sustained lethal 5s on a vehicle. If you want to do serious damage output, you can take Intercessors in a Impulsor, firing deck 6, shoot on top of it. If you are taking Ultramarines, take Tigerius, 2d6 shots, AP like 2 damage 2 in the vehicle. He's gonna get sustain, crit 5s, lethal hits. That's 5-man Hellblaster. If you attach him to a Hellblaster squad, which I believe you can, or a Stern Guard, or whatever the hell you want, it's just gonna do a lot of damage. Tigerius is crazy. It's really good. If you can find other characters that also do a lot of damage, it's gonna be really good. Yeah, it's really solid. Really solid. So run this detachment as well, because this is our damage detachment. Also, with +1 to wound, take Fire Strike server turrets in Ironstorm, because you have a built-in reroll in your whole army. Also, Fire Strike server turrets have twin-linked strength 10 guns, which means that they're wounding Greater Demons or Toughness 10 things. Most things are wounding on 3s, which goes to 2s with Oath of Moment. So you're and they're twin linked, so you're rerolling the wound rolls. They're hitting on 2s also, so you don't need buffs. Hitting on 2s, winning on 2s, or hitting on 2s, winning on 3s with twin linked. And then into the tougher targets, they're hitting on 2s with the free reroll from Iron Hands, so they're always hitting. And then they're wounding on usually 4s or 5s, but now they get plus on the wound with the Oath of Moment target. So when you really need to kill something, 150 points essentially going to hand somebody 4 d6 plus 1 damage saves. 4 last cannon saves are going to be handed to somebody every time that unit activates. And the best part is that Fire Strike server turrets 1 CP or watch on 4 plus, which means that if you roll 4 dice, 2 of them should be 4 plus. So those shots go through. They have twin links, so you're rerolling the wound rolls. Those will wound basically at all times. And you're playing Iron Hands, so you can reroll one of those hit rolls again in Overwatch to give yourself a solid chance to get 3 hits through. If you want to go even further, and you're taking Gilliman, for example, or something, you can pay a CP reroll for free using Gilliman, or just a CP, to use the Iron Hands reroll. So you roll 4 dice, 2 are hits, 2 are misses. Iron Hand reroll, turn the 3rd one to a hit. CP reroll, turn the 4th one to a hit. So the Fire Strike server turret shoots in your shooting phase, then it overwatches for automatic 4 hits, automatic 4 wounds, or give or take a little bit of damage. Also, if you rapid ingress that unit, to go for the Overwatch play, your opponent has to be respectful of it, because 4 last cannons that are essentially hitting on 4s rerolling are extremely powerful. And they're rerolling all hit rolls and all wound rolls at all times. And they're AP 3D 6 plus 1 damage. It's also durable because it's got 2 up save and it's 6 wounds apiece with toughness 6. That is not going to die easily. Really strong, try it out. That's the hot sauce. There's other stuff, but just reach out to me, get some coaching if anything interests you. There's other stuff I could talk about, but it's like literally 2 in the morning right now. This video is already super long. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully you guys listened to it. Hopefully you guys have questions. Because their Space Marines is so in depth, and they don't just play. It's not just Space Marines. It's Warhammer 40k. It's the core rulebook. The core rulebook dictates what we want to do, and Space Marines try to play what the core rulebook / missions are trying to do as best as they can by scoring points. And then they tweak their list to the meta / whatever is doing really good, and they bring the best thing that they can, and they score points. And sometimes they just really suck. Like, a lot of the time they just really suck. But because we're good at scoring points, because it makes us have to be good players, because we can't just table our opponents all the time, we just end up doing good. And when you do bad with Space Marines, it's because you need to just improve at everything small.